In this video, we are going to continue to solve rational equations. So if we look at example 1, we have 5 over 24 minus 2 over x minus 3 equals 1/4. Our first step is to look at each of our denominators and see if we can factor. I cannot factor any of these denominators, so I'm going to go straight to finding my least common denominator. Your least common denominator is the smallest denominator that you can get through multiplying. Now, if you're having a hard time, I suggest you look at your denominators that are just constants first. 24 and 4. What is the smallest number you can make these by multiplying? Meaning, what's your least common multiple of 24 and 4? And that's going to be 24. You can make 24 by multiplying it by 6, right? So then we have x minus 3. X minus 3 cannot just magically become 24. So x minus 3 is also a factor of my least common denominator. So my LCD is 24 times x minus 3. I'm going to leave this factored because it's going to make my life easier in the long run. From here, you're going to multiply each term by your LCD. So I'm going to multiply my first one by 24 times x minus 3, my second one by 24 times x minus 3, and my third one by 24 over x minus 3. When I do that, I can simplify. Here, if I'm multiplying, 24 is going to eliminate with 24 because 24 divided by 24 is 1. And that's going to leave me with 5 times x minus 3. Over here, x minus 3 divided by x minus 3 is 1. So I'm going to be left with 2 times 24, which is 48. And that's going to equal, well here, 24 divided by 4 is 6. So that's going to leave me with 1 times 6, which is 6 times x minus 3. My next step is going to distribute. So 5 times x is 5x, and 5 times negative 3 is negative 15. Bring down my minus 48. 6 times x is 6x, and 6 times negative 3 is negative 18. My next step is going to be to combine like terms. So I'm going to have 5x, and then I'm going to grab my calculator. And in my calculator, I'm going to do negative 15 minus 48. And I get negative 63 equals 6x minus 18. I have x's on both sides of my equation, so I am going to go ahead and get my x's over on the same side by subtracting 6x on both sides. So I'm going to have negative 1x minus 63 is equal to negative 18. From here, I can add 63 to both sides. And get 45. So I'll have negative x equals 45. To undo multiplication, I am going to do division and get that x is equal to negative 45. My next step is going to be to check for extraneous solutions by looking at my excluded values. Remember, to find your excluded values, you set your denominator that has a variable equal to 0 and solve. The only denominator that I need to worry about is this one right here, and that is when x was we had x minus 3 as our denominator. My other two denominators are constants. They're never magically going to turn into 0, so I don't have to worry about those. So here I'm going to have x minus 3 cannot be 0. To solve this, I'm going to add 3 to both sides and get that x cannot be 3. So x cannot be 3, and we got x equals negative 45. This is a valid solution, so that is my answer. Let's look at example 2. Remember that your very first step is to always factor your denominators first. Don't worry about factoring your numerators just yet. Wait until after you multiply to do that. Excuse me. I drank water earlier and it like went down my throat the wrong way or something. So here I'm going to have my first fraction. There's nothing to factor in my denominator, so that's going to stay that way. X squared minus x plus 1 over x plus 1 equals, for the next fraction, my numerator of x squared minus 7 will stay the same, and my denominator of x squared minus 1 is a difference of 2 squares. I can factor that as x plus 1 times x minus 1. And then I'll still have the plus x. From here, I can find the least common denominator. And my LCD is going to be x plus 1 times x minus 1. So I'm going to multiply each of my terms by that. X plus 1 times x minus 1. X plus 1 times x minus 1. X plus 1 times x minus 1. So let's see what simplifies. X plus 1 is going to eliminate with x plus 1, and that's going to leave me with x minus 1 times x squared minus x plus 1. Over here, x plus 1 eliminates with x plus 1, and x minus 1 eliminates with x minus 1, just leaving me with x squared minus 7 in my numerator. Plus, I'm going to bring down x, and if you multiply x plus 1 by x minus 1, you get back what we originally factored, which was x squared minus 1. My next step is going to be to use the distributive property. X times x squared is x cubed. X times negative x is negative x squared. X times 1 is x. Negative 1 times x squared is negative x squared. Negative 1 times negative x is positive x. Negative 1 times positive 1 is negative 1. Equals, I'm going to bring down my x squared minus 7. X times x squared is x cubed. X times negative 1 is negative x. So I'm going to clean up both sides, combine like terms on the left side and the right side, and see where we end up. So I'm going to have x cubed negative x squared minus x squared is negative 2x squared. X plus x is 2x minus 1. And over here, I'm going to have x squared. Again, there are no like terms over here, so it's going to stay the same way. Well, I have a cubic equation. I know it's cubic because my highest degree is 3. And so what I'm going to do first is get everything all over to the same side and see what I have at that point. So I am going to go ahead and subtract x cubed, subtract x squared, add 7, and add x. That way everything is all over on the left-hand side of the equation. X cubed minus x cubed is 0. Negative 2x squared minus x squared is negative 3x squared. 2x plus x is 3x. Negative 1 plus 7 is 6. And that is going to equal 0. Well, let's see if I can factor this. This looks like it has a GCF of negative 3. So I'll have x squared minus x minus 2. If I go ahead and factor this completely, I'm going to have x minus 2 times x plus 1. And then from here, I can use the principle of zero products to solve. Let me move my work over here. So I'm going to have negative 3 equals 0, x minus 2 equals 0, and x plus 1 equals 0. Negative 3 equals 0 is a false statement, so we don't have to worry about it. To undo subtraction, I'm going to do addition and get x equals 2. To undo addition, I'm going to do subtraction and get x equals negative 1. Now that we have found solutions, we need to check for extraneous solutions by looking at our excluded values. So I'm going to set each of my denominators equal to 0 and solve. Excuse me. So my first denominator is x plus 1, so that can't be 0. And then my second denominator is x squared minus 1, but we factor that to be x plus 1, x minus 1. I'm going to use the factored form because it's just one step closer to my answer. So x plus 1 cannot be 0. I'm going to subtract 1 on both sides and get that x cannot equal negative 1. To solve my second equation, I can use the principle of zero products and say, okay, either x plus 1 can't be 0 or x minus 1 cannot be 0. Well, we already solved this equation and we got negative 1. Over here, I'm going to add 1 to both sides and get that x cannot be positive 1. So if I look at this, we have that x cannot be negative 1, but negative 1 was one of our solutions. So because negative 1 is an excluded value, then this solution is not a part of our answer. So our only answer is x equals 2. This is our only solution because negative 1 cannot be a solution since it is an excluded value. Let's try this process again with example 3. Your first step is going to be to factor. So there's nothing to factor in my first fraction, so I'm going to go ahead and bring that one down. In my second fraction, if I try to factor this, it's going to end up being y plus 4 times y minus 1. And there's nothing that I can factor in my last fraction. So that one's going to stay as 1 over y minus 1. From here, I can identify my least common denominator. My least common denominator is going to be y plus 4 times y minus 1. You'll notice that this denominator has both of those factors, and then this denominator has part of that factor, and this denominator has the other factor. So both of these together is the LCD. So my next step is to multiply every term by our LCD. So I'm going to multiply our first term by y plus 4 times y minus 1. Our second term by y plus 4 times y minus 1. And my third one by y plus 4 times y minus 1. And now I can start simplifying. Y plus 4 times y, or divided by y plus 4 is 1. So those eliminate. 1 times y minus 1 is just y minus 1. Then y plus 4 eliminates with y plus 4, and y minus 1 eliminates with y minus 1, so that just leaves me with 2. And then lastly, on our last term, y minus 1 eliminates with y minus 1. 1 times y plus 4 is just y plus 4. Looks like my y's are going to eliminate, and when that happens, there is no solution. But let's see. If I combine like terms, I am going to have y minus 1 equals 6 plus y. If I try to get my y's on the same side, I get negative 1 is equal to 6. This is a false statement. When you get a false statement, there is no solution. Negative 1 does not equal 6. Yeah. I'm just double checking my math. Everything checks out. So this one has no solution. Let's try example 4. On example 4, we're going to follow the same exact process. There is nothing that can factor in my first term. In my second term, I can factor this right here. When I factor that, I'm going to have n plus 4 times n minus 2. And then there is nothing to factor in my third term, so that one's going to stay that way. My least common denominator, my LCD, is going to be n plus 4 times n minus 2. So I'm going to multiply everything on both sides by my LCD. When I do that, n minus 2 eliminates with n minus 2, leaving us with n plus 4 times 1, which is just n plus 4. N plus 4 eliminates with n plus 4, n minus 2 eliminates with n minus 2, leaving me with 2n plus 1, plus n plus 4 eliminates with n plus 4. So 2 times n is 2n, and 2 times negative 2 is negative 4. So I'm going to have n plus 4 is equal to 4n minus 3. I am going to get my n's on the same side of the equation, so I'm going to subtract 4n on both sides and get negative 3n plus 4 is equal to negative 3. My next step is going to be to subtract 4 on both sides and get negative 3n is equal to negative 7. To undo multiplication, I'm going to do division and get n equals positive 7/3. Now let me check my excluded values. So I'm going to set each of my denominators equal to 0. When I do that, I'm going to have n minus 2 and n plus 4. When you factor this, you get these factors. So you really just have to solve each equation once. So n minus 2 cannot be 0, and n plus 4 cannot be 0. To undo subtraction, I'm going to do addition and get n cannot be 2. To undo addition, I'm going to do subtraction and get n cannot be negative 4. My solution is 7/3. That is not an excluded value, so this is my answer.